if you're listening to this podcast, welcome to Sessions with Mary Jane. I'm Brendan O'Brien.
I'm Jordan Freed.
And I'm Reena Ezra.
And we are lucky to be joined here in New Jersey, the best state in all of the states, with our wonderful guest, filmmaker and actor from New Jersey, living in New Jersey, Steve Melone. Steve, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I didn't realize we were going. We're going.
That's right,
We started, we got it.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, like, all of our phones are bugged anyway, so we're just like on one giant podcast that lasts for our entire lives now at this point anyway.
Wow,
And I like to, I was just going to say, I like to think that we're always God's podcast, you know? He's just kind of listening to us all day, talking about stupid stuff in our houses.
He definitely pauses and fast forwards.
Yeah, probably.
There's stuff he probably wants to skip.
Yeah.
He's on 3 times speed. He's just like, but then he slows down for the Squarespace ads.
Right. God loves ads. Yeah.
God's a capitalist.
Yes. Yeah.
He just has a great website.
Yes.
Jesus.com.
Yeah. Which is
/God.
Steve, I said you were from New Jersey, but actually I didn't even ask. Like, are you from New Jersey originally, or where's your birthplace?
My birthplace is in a place
Of both.
called, you might have heard of it, called Hackensack.
Hackensack. Fountains of Wayne.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a Fountains of Wayne song, you're in New Jersey.
Yes. Do you like Hackensack, or did you like Hackensack?
Okay, so I actually was born in Hackensack Hospital, but I first lived in Clifton.
Okay.
Which is where I live now.
Yes.
But then, I was in Little Falls, and then I was in Mount Olive, mainly where I grew up, in Morris County, but I've always been in Jersey.
Yes. Which town would you identify as your hometown?
Mount Olive.
Okay, how come?
I mean, I was there from like 5 through, I went to college basically. So, I was there for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
How was growing up? Is it a busy household? Was it just you?
I have a brother and 2 sisters and my parents, so it was like there were 6 of us in the house. It was like pretty tight until both my older siblings went to college. So it was a pretty busy household. My mom was mostly like at home. She worked, but like off and on, and my dad was always, doing the gotta go make the money thing.
Yeah.
As we all do.
So you knew from like a young age you were always in the creative sphere.
Sort of. I feel like I was always kind of like a little, I don't know, I was like a little aimless for a long time, I feel like. I was always really into music, and my dad and my brother had a big love of music and knowledge of music, so that was like a big thing, like music knowledge, and kind of, they played guitars. I thought of myself more as like a musician than anything else for a long time, and then kind of got into filmmaking and storytelling more when I was in college, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, and like late high school. But yeah, I've been playing like guitar since I was really little, so that was always like my big creative outlet for a very long time. It's a good friend.
Yeah.
So who did you first play? Who
I was
did you
gonna
first
ask what
learn
were your
on guitar?
influences.
I can tell you the first 2 songs I learned on guitar. They were just riffs. I learned the Dueling Banjos riff.
Oh, yeah.
I played that probably like 1,000,000 times. My dad would just be like, "Shut the fuck up!"
Yeah, but that's so satisfying to play though, because like everyone knows that sound and that song, so it's just like, oh, I'm playing something that is like noteworthy that everyone knows.
Isn't that tune also the beginning of Boy Meets World?
No, but it's similar.
It sounds like it though, right?
It's Deliverance.
I haven't seen Deliverance yet.
Yes.
But people would like say that, and I was like, yeah, like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like a kid playing it. And the other one was Smoke on the Water. That riff.
Classics.
So I played those way too much.
Yeah.
For like a year and a half.
Yeah. Do you get like similar satisfaction making music and making movies?
Yeah, I think making movies is more like it's more collaborative, and at least for me at this point, music is more like personal kind of a thing. Like it's just me kind of a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time. So I think like it's more collaborative in terms of making a film, and like you bring all these other ideas, and it's more you're kind of like you're there's more input from other people coming into what's going out than I think when I make music. At least at this point, it's kind of been like this like sort of like self-journal kind of a thing.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Music
feels like a very internal process, and then film. Well, I mean, Does that make sense? Because I mean,
you sing in your head. It's definitely internal.
No, but I mean, like it starts with like I don't know. Even if you're doing like just a melody or instrumental or lyrical, like there is something internally you're processing. Yes, like with film, but it's different when you're. I guess just because when I think of sound and it's like a feeling or whatever, but like film is very visual. Yeah. Like so for me, it has that external aspect.
Right.
If that makes sense, that's how I view it. But also, we can just throw that out.
Throw back in.
You're all looking at me like I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess
that's our listening faces, Reena.
Am I the only one who processes that?
But inherently, film is like requires more people to be involved. In music, you could do it with one person. You could do it with maybe as much as we want, but like usually like it's between 1 and 5 is the common number, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like going back to the thing about the point about it feeling like very internal and like very personal is like you can like play music for yourself and you're like, oh, this is lovely. I'm just like playing music for myself. There's something about like if you make a movie by yourself with no one else involved and you just watch it, it's like not as satisfying.
The audience element, is different. It's different when people like see your work or they hear you. I don't know, like you were saying, like self-journaling. I don't know. You could keep certain things with music private that you don't ever have to show people. But also, it is very different chaos. Yeah. Like in the process with music versus like film. If you're talking about on set and like there's so much going on and you're like in crunch your time or like blah blah blah. Like certain things. I don't know. You would like speak more to that than me because I don't dabble at all in music. But like like feeling rushed sometimes when it comes to film versus
you're accountable to a lot more people and expectations from other
there's just so much exactly so many other movie
I guess it depends like I if I was somebody like I have friends that are in bands and that's like they have a different reference for that versus film than I do because I've mostly just been playing with myself except for like a couple little things here and there but I don't have that kind of at the moment at least don't have that kind of like expectation from in terms of getting and producing like music on a consistent basis at all.
So, when it comes to just shift gears a little bit,
Let's shift the gears.
Let's shift the gears. Let's put it up and down.
Everyone, shift your gears down.
When it
is that what gears sound like now?
Don't your gears sound like that?
Mr. Tesla over here before crashing.
I think yours sound like this, like.
That's what it sounds when you press the clutch. That's exactly what it sounds like in a manual car. I got that right.
Cool. Thanks, Reena. Appreciate it.
Just because, of course, we want to talk about so much more about Canned, but we'll, go back to your early days.
Sure.
But just for Canned specifically, was there anything you were involved in with music? The music of that project or any project before that?
Yeah, I did the music on a couple. So my friend Jake Shapiro, who's a great musician, he's in a band called Twice Removed. That's great. Jersey City based band. Shout out.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we did the music together on a film. I've done like 4 48-hour films, and 3 that I produced, 2 that were good. And
how do you define good?
What is that? Like, is that 164 hours?
They're all special, but it's like such like a. It's just it's like total chaos. Those things. Yeah. They're really fun though. They're great. Like figure it out. Fun face kind of a thing.
It tests you and it challenges you, right?
So 2 of them were really. They were all good, but the last 2 were really solid. We had a score in the last 2, and I'm sorry, I take it back. 3 of them were anyway. They're great.
You're realizing that one of them was good.
Yeah, so
that was pretty good.
That was fine. No, but there is. I did the music in one of them solely, and then Jake did the music in another one with me. That was really good. So like that's how the most I did that. And then for this one, did not do really any music myself. We actually like licensed 2 songs for it, basically. So I've only done a couple, and it's mostly been like pretty like just guitar focused kind of music. Yeah. So, but that's like a dream is to one day like do like a, music for a film, some kind like that.
Yeah. Would you want to do it for your own film, or would you prefer to do music for someone else's film?
I guess it would be either. I guess for my own is like would be like a great cool thing to do at some point. But it's like you can't like force yourself in there and be like, put my fucking music in there.
I know. John Carpenter did it. He did pretty well for himself, right?
But I mean, it's got to be like the right. It's got to feel good. It's like if it were somehow that was to happen, that'd be cool one day.
Right.
There is something too about like the new tools we have for music, how you literally could just be composing in your room. Like our composer for 100 Words was probably just in his room or his home studio, like doing it when like you used to think of it as like, John Williams has an orchestra, he's conducting and he wrote the music and he knows what it's saying in his head. Now it's like you could like lay down beats like very electronically, and I feel like it could be like a very personal experience with like a film that you made and like watching your baby like in your house.
It goes back to us saying like the number of people as technology has evolved, it's become like you are less reliant on people. You're like, oh well, I could just learn to do everything myself. But then I feel like it does miss that human spark or human element when you are like in the mess with people and you have your heads together, and then it's I mean, I'm not that self-confident where I'm like, I have to ask people or bounce things off of people to be like, oh, is this the right thing? Oh, well, what about this? Well, what do you think of blah, blah, blah? But some people can like, I mean, Bo Burnham, was he inside? Just him? The whole thing?
I think so.
I guess so, No, I think he was, but I'm just saying, like, that's crazy. Like, that's
it is crazy. I feel like that was, like, the time to do that, though. I feel like if you were to try to do that now, you'd be kind of like really driving yourself crazy.
No, he like timed that out very well in terms of like making that and releasing it at like the right time and just everything like felt like it was at the right point in time.
I loved seeing him like snap though when
oh my gosh.
It's like totally. It's like fuck yeah. It's like not that I'm doing that thing that he's doing, but you're like working on something or just like in regular life, you're just trying to keep up and just like get things going, and something else fucking gets in there and you just go fuck.
And it's something very relatable of like, cause like even with that too, and like you're watching it and you're like, oh, this sounds like in your mind it sounds good, but like as the creator he knows it's not what he wants to sound like, so one little thing throws him off, and then you just like there's like nothing, like no reaction you would have but just like that guttural, it's like frustration with yourself and frustration that it just it didn't go the way you wanted to go. Wait, so can you tell us how did the idea for Canned come about? And also for those who don't know, listening, please explain what Canned is.
Yes. So Canned is a short mockumentary film about the last group of canned laughter artists in show business. They work on a show called Love Me Please, which is a 45-season spanning sitcom that is... And the group is spearheaded by Sherman Kinsley, who's the laugh coordinator. And it's basically a group of 4 people that are kind of the canned laughter artists that are kind of behind the scenes of this show. And they all are kind of met with the realization, more or less, that their time is coming to an end. And basically as an art form. And, now what are you going to do? And that's kind of the...
It's such a fun concept. It's just so... It looks so good. And the characters are just so... I love this style.
There's also something about it too that like it is just about the end of canned laughter, but like it feels like we're already in the end of like TV as we know it. Outside of like Netflix, like Disney Plus, like Apple TV, and like HBO, which like some people watch when it comes out, but most people don't. Like there aren't really shows that you watch when they happen anymore. So it's like these types of shows like don't even feel like they exist anymore.
Right. Yeah, I think there's like there's something that was like not really intentional with the film, where it was like, it's canned laughter. It's like this art form, but like, you could be a filmmaker, like an independent filmmaker, and you feel like making an independent film is just like harder to get made. Like that creative art form is just so much challenging now. It's like, oh man, if I could just, it's like, Marvel's doing great. It's like, this is doing great. It's like, what, I just saw Beau Was Afraid. That was great. But like, there's still like great films like that being made that are really like, like what the fuck, that are great, that are just, they just snap you like into like this other world like that isn't the Marvel universe. And but it's also like, I think musicians have that kind of a feeling where it's like, there's like no money in it kind of a thing, and there's this art form. So it's kind of speaking about like, I think like insert your passionate thing that you're into and how it's kind of gotten harder to do, or not, or more challenging to do, or been considered less valuable by whatever metric out there, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much.
Sort of talking about that.
For art in general, it's always like, is this still relevant? Is this still timely? Mm-hmm. How does this hold up? How does this, like, everyone's trying to keep up with the new? But I think things just get saturated. Marvel stuff and every other big blockbuster, if you have another Transformers movie or another Fast and Furious movie, the market is so saturated. I think people eventually will, it's full circle, people will eventually, like a lot of social medias, things are not, I mean, what goes up eventually comes down. So I feel like it will plateau, it'll come to whatever decline, but things will revamp. I think people are yearning for, especially post-pandemic, people are yearning for, oh my God. Like, so when more and more people I talk to have Criterion. And it's just like, oh yeah, people didn't know what that was, or people weren't watching old classics, or people weren't watching old, like, hidden gems that thing, or they're like, oh, what was this director's influence? Oh my God, I can see a whole collection on here.
And there's weird shit on there too.
There's weird shit on there.
It gets harder and harder to, like, strangely with, like, as like hugely saturated as the market is, I feel like it's like harder and harder to find like genuinely odd things and genuinely weird things. Like the internet definitely has a lot of weird and unusual things, but like in movie theaters, it's like it's not as prevalent, basic. I guess. Yeah.
I think people will get tired of basic though, or they'll get tired of the same spiel. Like Marvel fans are tired of the same formula you're doing every single time. Yeah. So something like yours, I was just like, oh my God, you can immediately see this as like an expanded series, as something, but like this is something I could see that I would just sit down and watch. I would probably binge. But but like, what were your plans for Canned? Was there anything more to that, or this was just like a one and done?
Yeah, so I'm actually trying to expand it into like a more, I think I'm leaning towards this thing was like, would it work as a feature? Would it work as like a series where you expand it? So it's like Canned Laughter is just one sort of part of like a post-production sound kind of a place. Yeah. So there's a couple. So it's kind of being worked on, but kind of like kind of expanding it and maybe using this version of the film as like a proof of concept is kind of what I think we're leaning towards a little bit. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah. But going back to like initial inspiration though, or how I came up with the idea, it's kind of a funny story. So I work in broadcasting, like mostly like news and a little sports, but anyway, so like broadcast engineering kind of. Mm-hmm. And my first job out of college was like in master control, it's called, and it was an overnight job, and you would watch like programming, and it'd be really really terribly basically you're making sure all the ads are running and there's no hiccups on air, because then you have to, that ad is going to be like, hey, we want our money back. So you'd be like kind of
oh, you're that guy.
Yeah. And they're like, it's your fault if it doesn't go the right way.
Yeah, there's like, so that was the basic
so when I'm watching TV and I'm like, oh, all these ads are seamless. Everything would run together. I'd be like, oh, it's
I wouldn't really mess with the ads. Really, I would just make sure there's a lot of other things in the job, but the biggest thing I would say would be watching all the programming for the shift and making sure all the ads were, screened properly. If there's any mistake, there's like a backup system that you'd switch to, and then the ads would be safe on that system. Yeah. So it'd be so like kind of it's a kind of a weird job. That was my first job, and it was like overnights, and I'd be like half asleep. But I'd watch a lot of the shows on those overnight shifts would be like Good Times and like there's a few others. I forget what other shows, but a lot of Good Times and
Seinfeld, the most classic.
I saw Seinfeld. That was more in the evenings. Okay. So in the overnight, it wouldn't be so much. Oh damn. But they also would have like there'd be like a 4-hour period. Be like Maury, Bill Cunningham, Jerry Springer, rest in peace. And there was one other one. Jerry Springer was like the end of that like 4-hour chunk, but it would be like 3 or 4 hours of those kinds of shows. And then, but anyway, so I'm like half asleep one time and Good Times is on. I'm hearing the laugh track, and I was like, oh, like what if they were like artists? And that was but I was like half asleep and watching it for like, and this is like 6 months in, a year into the job, and I kind of had this weird like silly idea.
Yeah. Wow, that long ago.
That was 2014. Yeah. But that was like the first like seed, and then kind of. So it was like slowly chipped away on the script for like a long time, and kind of bounced off. I'm part of a writers group, and we all kind of use each other as soundboards, and kind of I read the script many times in there, and Anthony Echo was the co-writer on it, and he joined, which made it really good. So there's like a lot.
Yeah, the
big
writing is
community.
really good. I really like the writing.
Yeah, that was also like in part because of the big, again, community that from college that we all still communicate a lot about our ideas and stories. So
that's
been a
great.
Huge,
that's amazing.
Huge help, and highly recommend.
Yeah, this is the crew from Marijuana Minutes, correct?
Yeah,
yeah. Which you also we all saw you in at.
Yeah, very different. Very different.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Very entertaining.
Yeah. When did that project start? Like the initial parts of it, at least for yourself.
So they started shooting that in March of 2020, and then I think we had like a table reading in that spring or like maybe the summer before or something maybe. So I had read the script like, I guess like a year before they shot it maybe, or maybe less than that. I forget the exact timeline, but that was read in the writers group that I'm into, that Ryan's in. So that was, as I recall. So that was So I read like early drafts of it, and I was lucky that was great to be part of. Also, like, being involved in Marijuana Minutes and that film was huge for kind of seeing them go through the process before I went through Cannes was really beneficial too. Yeah. Especially in light of COVID and like dealing with that, and that was, so it was really good. I would call him and be and like have issues or like just need to like talk it over because he'd been through it, and so me and Ryan would talk about, I'd call Ryan up and kind of about different topics. So shout out to Ryan Moore, who's a great guy and great filmmaker.
Yeah,
and then the Marijuana Minutes poster makes an appearance in Cannes, right, in the background.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
In
one of the takes, so that's in a scene where there's like a commotion and headphones are thrown.
Yeah.
And in one of the shots, we couldn't make it work as a continuity, but in one of the shots, they throw at the poster, and the poster falls. And it would have been like perfect, but didn't happen.
But how was your writing process?
So again, so Anthony Echo came on as a co-writer like late into, basically once production was starting. Echo, more or less, maybe not starting, but recently before it, he had basically been coming in to write more at that point. But I had done like 20 drafts mostly without him. And in terms of me writing, it was like, it would just be off and on. It would just depend. It was almost like cycles. And I didn't really have like a production mindset until really, until like COVID hit. I didn't really like go harder into the script to finish it. Yeah. Because then I was just at home more, and I was like, all right, I'm going to make this thing. Yeah. So that was like a big, that was a big thing of like, I'm going to do this. And again, we were meeting in the writers group all the time, so that was another big thing. So I probably was doing it before COVID as well, honestly, but I was definitely, it definitely like ticked up because we were meeting more consistently on Zoom, I think. Yeah. And that was like, I was really bringing it in to sharpen it up more and more. And then once we went into production, we did like 5 different weekends over a year and a half about a year and a half. And like every time we finished like one weekend, we'd schedule out the logistics, like which pages we were going to cover for the next weekend, which might be like a month out. It might be like 3 months out. And me and Echo would just kind of like really like talk about and tighten the script for those scenes and for the entire script too. But like we would really hone in on those scenes. So there was that, and then the other thing about the writing of and how it came out is there's a lot of improvising. So that was a big.
I was about to ask.
Yeah.
I couldn't. Yeah.
Did you go into it knowing there was going to be a lot of improv, or was that something that just kind of happened naturally?
No, that was like a big thing I really wanted, was I wanted, people that could improvise a lot. So the lead actor, Phil Casale, who's great, who I called Phil Casale for like 6 months. I apologize. He was so nice. He didn't correct me, and then I heard him say it once, and I was like, oh, fuck. I'm sorry. But he's a great improviser. He's worked at the Pit a lot in the city, and I forget where else he's worked. I know primarily there, though, but he's a wonderful improviser. So much of his stuff got in. Brendan Patterson, who I think is has done more theater stuff, but he does a lot of everything. He did a great job improvising. I don't think he had done a lot of improv per se, but he, I couldn't tell. Marcy Weber had a really great. She also was improvising a lot, and then Sophia Parola was great. She kept saying, I'm not funny, but I was like, no, you're great. It's making me laugh. It's funny. So she was great. And then Adam James Barth, who plays the audio engineer in the film, he was in my Improv 2 class that we were both in.
I love that character.
Yeah, me too.
So most of that stuff was him improvising.
Okay.
That made it in. That he's
my
talking.
gosh,
Almost all of that is improv.
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
So I don't think he had any lines. I think his only line in the script is Sherman, Regina Woodley would like to talk to you upstairs immediately, I think is the only line.
Wow. It's so seamless. Like, it was
Yeah.
so, and it feels like you're watching a real life person. You're like, oh yeah,
Right.
I could totally see this person's like with their job. And
Right.
Yeah.
it's very good.
Yeah,
that was so grounded.
I knew he did music. He plays a lot of music in the film too, but he's really like a great musician. And we were both in the same improv class, improv level 2 in the city that happened, and we were halfway through it when COVID hit. And we were like the last pit comedy class that was happening. And like in our class, she was like, all the other classes are coming in today, and it's just us. Let's just fucking do it. Fuck it. And we were like, all right. And everyone saying we did it. It was great. Yeah.
Nice.
But if I didn't take that class, I wouldn't have met Adam, and he did such a great job, and everyone.
Man, that must have been so fun on set, especially when you have improvisers, or I mean, of course, anybody who's in theater, but also with, I was gonna say, having a writing group or writers group, like as do we have ours, but even like a partner, I find that is like a huge motivator.
Yeah.
Because then it's just like, oh, you're like also excited to bring it to the table, and you're like, oh my god, well, what are they gonna think about this?
Right.
Or like, oh, what are they? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, everyone was like totally game, and like a lot of people brought their ideas to the table for like improv too, like even like the production design department, whatever department, everyone like felt, which I felt really good about, and I wanted, was like they felt comfortable to like bring an idea to like one of the producers, and then like would kind of bring it to me and be like, hey, what do you think of? And they'd be like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Sure, we have time. Yeah, if we had time, which sometimes we didn't. Yeah, like for a lot of the interview, like talking head bits of the film, those we had like a list of questions we gave to each person like in advance. So I think it was like about 7 questions. It was like between 5 and 10 questions, I guess, for each of them, so that like 2 weeks out, I gave it to them, and they had the answers. I didn't know what the answers were until the day, and then it was So it was like a great surprise. We were all laughing, and sometimes I would laugh, and I would actually break in the middle of it, and I would actually have to ask.
You just
especially Adam.
Ruin the take.
I definitely ruined. I think that was something in the 48-hour films that I really. There's like this one moment that I laughed so hard during the take, but it was like 3:30 in the morning, and I could tell everyone was really angry at me. I cannot do that going forward.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't
really
do that
laughing.
with our sketches sometimes. I literally have to turn around and not look at them because it's not easy.
Yeah. What's like the biggest challenge in making a comedy, especially in terms of like maintaining like a certain consistent like comedic tone, or even just like knowing when you got the right take for it?
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, you know how you can be writing and it could be going really well, and you're just like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Hey, it's just, you can do that on set too, but you're accountable to so many people, so you have to really be you have to kind of like be like, all right, that's enough. Like we got it. And sometimes I think I would maybe go a little too much, or like want to keep going and be like, all right, we should probably move on.
Right.
It's
so much fun. So it's like part of like, cause you are still doing it for the fun of it. So you want to keep enjoying it, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there was, again, because there was so much for this one, because there was so much improv and there was so many people with so many great ideas. I felt like I would just like throw things at them and they would just nail it, and I would be like, they'd make me think about something else, and then you want to like, oh, let me throw this in the bag, and then you can keep doing that. So you got to really kind of hone in on the things that you really need and what what would be nice to get, and kind of being realistic sometimes, or being a little more aware of that. So that can be challenging, but it's so much fun. Yeah. And also, if everyone else is having fun, sometimes everyone's going. It's contagious. Drunk with comedic fun. Yeah.
Did you always know it was going to be a mockumentary?
Yes. Yeah. There was in the writer's group. There was an idea about making it based in like the 70s.
It's
I can see that. I can totally see that.
It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
That was Jared Cardenas said that. From did you know Jared?
He was in Marijuana Minutes, right?
He's, what's the character's name?
He's the one that wears the bathrobe, right? Yeah.
He's a ne'er-do-well.
Yeah.
So he said that. We're like, what if this was in the 70s? He was like, oh, I can't unsee it now as an idea.
Yeah, I do like the little like flashback sequence that we do get in Cannes that's in there of like the old like when
I love the old man.
The old man, right? And then with MCU, right? Because you're like you play the younger version. Yeah. So
that was something I was really excited for. So. And I thought, what do you think? Do you think we looked like I
thought you were very similar. I was like, oh, this is how he could look when he's old.
Yeah. I thought it was way better than a lot of other like big like productions that do like the casting of like an older person versus a younger person. Because there's so many times where I watch like HBO things or like movies and I'm like, man, they could have gotten anybody to play this younger version of them, and they didn't like really get that close to them, you know.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, this may be silly, but because I knew beforehand, we were told like who you were in Cannes, and we were told about the project and everything. When we met more of the crew and the cast of the people for Marijuana Minutes at Garden State Film Festival, I thought for a second I was like watching and I was just like, is he the old guy? And they just did really good. Because I was just like, that would have blown me away. But then I saw the flashback and saw you, and I was like, oh, well, holy crap. But yeah, your first split second,
the guy who plays Alan Risdale, the canned laughter of old, he's 90.
Oh, wow.
I thought he was like 80 at most.
Wow. How'd you meet him?
We cast him through Backstage.
Okay.
Wow.
What?
So wild, right?
Shout out Backstage.
Yeah, we cast him Backstage. He was great. He's been consistently. It seems like a really loved character. People love that. That was like the most. That was really funny. That was all one day of shooting, and then I on the day we shot, he had a lot of lines to get in the one day, but he had an issue with a couple of the lines at one point, but he's like, oh, I have a short-term memory issue. But by the way, I'm 89. And I was like, oh fuck, like, I had no idea, because again, I just saw him on a screen the entire time. Through Zoom and whatnot. So it was like, but he was amazing and super sharp, and like, you know, even though that happened, he was still like he had really great ideas. He just fucking nailed everything. Yeah. Like the laugh at the very end, like initially we were gonna have like definitely like an in memory of, and like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But
spoil it. You want it?
But initially fuck it. I'll just do it. So initially he was gonna be in like a body bag, and this guy was like down to do all this shit. Yeah. And Michael DeJoy, our cinematographer, who's great, he was like, I think it's too much. He was like, basically, him and Brittany, who are our assistant director, were kind of trying to be like, hey man, I think it's good. Yeah. They didn't say it, but it was kind of like, I think you can get the point across and do something a little bit simpler. And that was him coming in. He just did 2 takes of him laughing at the end that we used for the, which was great. Yeah. So.
Is there anyone, whether it be someone part of the cast or the crew, that you've had to have like a tough conversation with, or somebody who wasn't really getting what you were trying to convey, and it did not go well, and it was a negative experience?
Yeah, so I haven't talked about this. someone who's so no one on there's somebody on set, but I don't want to get into that. It was not. Yeah. It wasn't like it was a small thing really, but there's someone that I had been working with creatively who's going to be a producer, and we kind of butted heads on. We just butted heads. It was like kind of like a sort of like a power struggle kind of a thing, and we kind of decided amicably to not work together on the project, and that was before we got into production. So it was kind of like all the pre-production was kind of happening. We were about to start, and then we're good. We're still good, but they kind of did not stay on as producer. And
what would you take away from that experience?
I think it was just like what did I take away? I guess it was just like, some personalities don't mesh well together creatively. Or
that's so true.
Especially when it's like producer and director. So it depends on in a different kind of hierarchy, maybe it'd be good, but in this one it didn't, on like an independent kind of a level maybe, and yeah, it just didn't, it wasn't really meant to be, I think, to do that creatively, but it was still like still learned a lot, and still like some of those ideas made it into the film and were good and everything, but and we still like will help each other out, but it's just like, I guess that wouldn't be that in terms of that kind of relationship, I guess that wouldn't happen. Or if it did happen again, there would have to be like other things discussed ahead of time that maybe we didn't talk about until we realized it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a business of people.
Yeah.
You're right. You're dealing with a lot of different personalities.
Right.
And it is like a film will always be a structure or a hierarchy. They really like to have that.
Yeah.
I guess you can't do it without it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, is that, like, do you think that like the kind of normal structure of filmmaking, do you think that is like the most conducive to making films, or do you think there is like a world where there's other like variations on where it might like there are benefits of like doing different kinds of structures?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about that. I mean, I think when there's a lot of money involved, I don't think you can really get past that.
Yeah.
For this film, there was like a little more wiggle room. Like there wasn't, like it was mostly it was like some crowdfunding and like a lot of self-funding. So the thing was like, it's hard. So I'm not really answering your question, but I'm just trying to think like, I guess when it comes to like there being a lot of money, I don't think so as much, depending on the project. Maybe with like visual effects and things like that, when it gets to that point where it's like maybe you don't need as big of a team, you can kind of have more freedom for that kind of a thing. But I think in terms of bodies on the ground doing like all those jobs, it's kind of hard, and I think it's necessary in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But for Canned, it was like no one was really being paid, or if anybody was being paid, it was very little. Not that I don't want you to. If we get bought for a good amount of money for the film or something, I'll be trying to spread it around.
Yeah.
But it's been like, you know, everyone's like coming on to help you basically and really doing you a favor for this big project, and you have to you know, I can't be like I can't be pulling like rank on people and being like an asshole and things if it's like basically for nothing. I feel like it just doesn't feel, and people need to be into it. And like I think feel involved, especially if it's going to be going on for a year and a half and it's 5 weekends and it's during COVID and all these things. Like you can't. So
that's their time.
We had to like really like be flexible and like work with people on like what they can and can't do, and it was really like stressful at times. But
so logistically, it was like one of the biggest undertakings.
So logistically was part of that. Yeah, definitely with COVID too, and also just like again creatively like letting people feel like pretty free or not shutting people down. Like Anthony Ecca, who's a co-writer, he actually had a whole other version of Canned as a story that he admitted to, and he would talk about it too, and everything's fine. But he wanted to kind of like swoop in and kind of have his script made, and we kind of butted heads a little bit, and I had to like let that, you know, I had to not take that personally. And he came in and became co-writer, and it became what it is now, which we're really proud of. So if, you know, you could be like really tense and kind of really feel like I'm in charge and like I'm like this is my thing. Yeah. And I think letting that kind of not be the way you make a film, and like kind of being more, you know, collaborative and kind of letting people into your story and kind of maybe changing things you've been holding dear for years, because like this was a script I had for years. There were certain things I had to let go of that I had written in for like 4 years. So it was like, no, my friend,
it's the baby. Yeah.
So yeah.
Are there certain scenes in it that are exactly the way you saw them in your head, or the opposite? Like, are there certain scenes that like you just like could not even conceive it coming out the way it did in your head as it did like actually?
Yeah, I think the whip. I'm trying to think which ones came out. The Talking Heads. For like Phil's Talking Head came out like how I was kind of hoping it would. Yeah, it's tough.
It's so interesting how every phase is a new experience.
Yeah.
Writing it, then the next draft, and the next draft, and then actually doing it in person, and then when it goes through the post tunnel, and you're like, oh wow.
Yeah, and Tom Mike, our editor, was like really great at really sharpening it down and helping me like kind of in terms of like, you know, they say killing your darlings and all those things. Like he was definitely